Hello there, and welcome back to another Cloud with Chris weekly vlog. You're with me, Chris Reddington, and here we talk about all things cloud. Now, thank you for joining today. If you're based in the UK, happy bank holiday to you. I hope that you are enjoying the time off. It doesn't look like it's the sunniest of days here in the south of England at least, but hopefully it's a bit nicer weather wherever you are and you'll be able to enjoy that a little bit as well. So we're going to jump swiftly into things here because there's actually a fair amount to cover this week in terms of Azure Blogs, updates and the like. So we'll waste no time. We'll go ahead, we'll jump straight over. Okay, so first off then, we're going to kick off with the Azure blogs as we usually do. And the first one is about education, about skilling and learning. And this first one here is about teaming up with Coursera on new Azure specializations and scholarships. I think there's a wealth of things to go and learn with the platform, of course, and it's really great to see this investment happening from this perspective and really seeing the value of investing in learning and making that accessible. When you think about things like Microsoft Learn and obviously now this Coursera partnership, great to see this, so good to put that one on the radar for you folks. Next up then, we won't dig into this in too much depth, but it's good to be aware that there are some additional Azure VM SKUs now available in preview. So some general purpose ones, the DS series, and the memory intensive, the EV series as well. So go ahead, check those out, worth keeping on top of those if you are running any IaaS based workloads here at all. Next up then, there is another event coming up, an Azure SQL digital event this time. So of course, we recently talked about the storage event, which I believe happened this week, if memory serves me right, the week just gone, I should say. This next one here looks to be all about Azure SQL, being able to innovate with SQL coming up on May the 14th. So, sorry, May the 4th, I should say. I completely read that wrong. So if you're watching this live or you're watching this within 24 hours, it's tomorrow. Otherwise, maybe you need to time travel, or hopefully it's recorded and you can go and watch back. But that is happening tomorrow, so go ahead and register for that one if you are interested in using SQL and understanding how you can go and use that. Next up then, there was the Red Hat Summit, which took place last week, and they gave a bit of a summary of some of the things that were taking place and happening there. So, for example, some updates or additions there in terms of being able to use hybrid benefits with reserved instances for Red Hat Enterprise Linux was kind of interesting there, I thought. JBoss Enterprise Application Platform is now in preview with App Service again, another interesting update. And they also talk about how if you have any on-premises Red Hat OpenShift servers that you can, or clusters I should say, you can now go ahead and onboard those using Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes as well, and get all of those benefits like the GitOps integration and some of those other benefits which are there as well. So great to see that. And they're also working on enhancing the Ansible integration as well with Azure. They don't really allude much more than that, but Ansible, for anyone who's not aware, is another of those configuration as code framework platforms that is available for you to go and use. It does span into the infrastructure as code space as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that side of things as well. So moving swiftly on then, another roundup there in terms of the Azure cost management updates. So this time all about what's happened in April. So we've probably covered a few of these throughout April, but just as a quick recap, you can now get retail prices in currencies other than USD, which, you know, for someone based in Europe, I think is a great update. A date picker view in the cost analysis preview page, and then some updates there with the cost management labs as well. Being able to deploy some of these landing zones, I guess, and some of these foundations at scale is obviously a key part of making sure you can manage your cost in the right way. So there's been a great series from Thomas Maurer and Sarah Lean on that as well, and then talking about how you can go and operate or empower operators at scale in their cloud migration journey as well. So good variety there from the cost management side of things. So if cost is important to you, which hopefully it is, it should be one of those pillars of design, go ahead and check that blog post out there as well. Next up then, this was an exciting update which I think came out on Thursday or so, either way it was towards the tail end of the week, is that Microsoft has acquired Kinvolk. So they do some particularly interesting work. I was reading up about them after the acquisition here, and what they talk about is some of the things that they do with like the flat car container, for example. They've been very involved with Core OS and I think with Rocket as well, for example. So they, I guess, show with this acquisition just that investment again that Microsoft is really trying to make in the cloud native space with containers, etc., in that journey. So again, if you are really interested in AKS, Azure Arc, or Kubernetes in general, this is probably one to keep on your radar. And there was a good blog post from the Kinvolk team, actually, where they talk about their perspective on it as well. So again, worth keeping that on your radar, checking that one out. And I think this is the last blog post from the Azure blogs for this week. And this one is very, very interesting, actually, especially for anyone who's in the app dev space looking to build these real-time applications, maybe like a chat-based application, for example, talking all about a new service called Azure Web Pub Sub. And this is all about enabling applications through things like WebSockets and having that effectively as a platform as a service. So they do a good job here in this blog post talking about some of those scenarios, what it unlocks, what it's there to achieve, and also give a few screenshots about how it works. Pricing model was quite interesting, I thought. It's done based on units. So if you think about something like event hubs or similar, you have a number of units. It's a similar kind of model. They talk about how many concurrent connections you can have in this as well. And yeah, it's just a really interesting service, and it's one that I want to get my hands on and go and take a look at. It'll be interesting to see where this blends in with things like the Azure Communication Service, which has obviously been around for a little while now, because they mentioned live chat as one of those options here. But there's so many others, right? When you think about WebSockets and what it enables, that real-time communication, things like bidding platforms and auctions, things like gaming, there's going to be so many scenarios that actually this can unlock and just make that real-time experience a bit simpler. So again, worth keeping that on your radar and maybe doing a bit of a POC, because as I say, that is in preview at the moment, so worth just keeping on your radar and monitoring and understanding what's going on in the space there. So with that, Azure Updates time, our usual rapid fire. What we're going to do here is just jump straight through. So first off, new Azure VMs for general purpose and memory intensive workloads now in public preview, which we have already talked about in the Azure blogs. So we will continue moving forwards here. And let's jump all the way to the bottom. So Azure Container Registry now generally available in Korea South. The public preview of Azure Database of Postgres Hyperscale Citus is available in new regions. And those regions, it says, are France Central and Switzerland North. Azure Event Grid for Azure Cache Redis is now GA. Excellent. That was only in preview, I think, a little while ago we were updating on that one. General availability of Azure Hybrid Benefit for Linux with reserved instances and VMSS support. Public preview Azure Database for Postgres Flexible Server Intelligent Performance. Azure Database for MySQL Flexible Server now supports 8.0.21. Public preview of Azure Database for MySQL Flexible Server is available in 2 new regions, France Central and Brazil South. Azure Database for MySQL Flexible Server Zone Redundant High Availability now GA in new regions, and those regions are UK South and Japan East. Azure SQL Public Preview updates for April 2021, and I think there was only one update if I remember correctly there, which was, yes, enabling cross-region business continuity and DR with active geo-replication on Azure SQL DB Hyperscale. Public preview of stateful and 1-minute frequency log alerts in Azure Monitor. That one I thought was very interesting. It brings into the log analytics queries or the log search based alerts this state-based approach which you get with the metric-based alerts, and then you also now get this 1-minute frequency log alerts, which I'm sure there are some scenarios where that's going to be useful. You know, maybe if you have a very short rapid-fire burst kind of scenario where you want to turn on login. Really interesting that one comes up there. Some additional updates around Azure Monitor. So App Insights work item integration with things like Azure DevOps or GitHub. There has been some enhancements there, so go ahead, check that one out. Public preview of Forced Failover now available with its own redundant high availability for Azure Database for MySQL. I guess we talked about that one a moment ago. Azure UltraDisk is now GA in North Central US. Public preview of Azure Log Analytics in South India. Public preview for Azure Application Insights in South India and West Central US. GA of Setup Azure Site Recovery with proximity placement groups across hybrid and cloud disaster recovery scenarios. That sounds interesting. Hybrid and cloud. Didn't quite catch the hybrid last time, so I'll need to dig into that one a bit more. GA of Azure Site Recovery now supports cross-continental disaster recovery for 3 region pairs. That's very interesting if you have maybe some higher recovery targets that you need to go and meet there. This next one I thought was particularly interesting. Azure Site Recovery now supports Azure Policy in public preview. So when you think about the ability to go and onboard VMs at scale into Azure Site Recovery, that is the key to unlocking that. And I believe that's one of the kind of scenarios that they call out here. Yeah, exactly. Configure DR on virtual machines by enabling replication. So very, very interesting use case there being unlocked. Azure Web Pub Sub Service is now in public preview, as we just discussed on the blogs, and Azure Sphere version 21.04 is now GA as well. So, lots of updates there. Let's move us swiftly on and look at the Azure DevOps blog this week. So, first up, we have another Azure Fun Bites episode with Jay Gordon. This time, the guest of the session is Anthony Chu, and they talk all about static web apps, a service which is close to my heart. I know I am using Azure Storage and CDN for Cloud with Chris, but I am evaluating static web apps and kind of looking at when I make the migration across to that and what the kind of the benefit and the value is for me. But you know, I've made quite an investment in storage accounts and the GitHub actions that enable that, so there's not so much of a reason yet for me to move. But for anyone new to this kind of world and building these types of apps, it's a no-brainer. It gives you so much benefit. You know, a lot of the work that I've gone ahead and created with GitHub Actions is just done for you as part of the service. So brilliant service. They talk all about it, and I really encourage you to go and take a look at that session there, because I think there's a lot of value it can go and give you. Now, if you're building something microservices related, you probably know the pain about re-architecting from that monolith, or maybe that distributed monolith, or maybe that kind of service-based architecture. Well, what they talk about here, so we've got Jessica Dean and Damien Brady talking all about re-architecting for microservices, featuring containers with flavors of Windows and Linux as well there. So again, worth taking a look at that one if that is kind of the journey that you are on. Another great update is Delivery Plans 2.0, which has been in preview for some time, is now GA. So some great updates, the increasing of the number of teams that you can use, for example, being able to have a start or a target date, for example, or iterations, better visualizations there, roll-up information, dependency tracking, card styling, start time visualizations, and more. It's just a great series of updates there. And I think that portfolio view of planning is something that was not necessarily a gap, because you had the Delivery Plans V1, but you know, was quite potentially restricted in some ways. So great to see that there's been that investment, and that is now GA as well. Brilliant update. And then some updates from the DevOps community. So GitHub and using code stored in GitHub, a dash of YAML, the perfect dressing in Azure DevOps, static code analysis, Chekhov, Terraform and Azure DevOps, logging and Azure VM scale set application installation to application insights with PowerShell, and creating and executing a new pipeline inside an Azure DevOps pipeline itself there as well. So lots for you to update on in the DevOps space. And of course, we're not done with DevOps, because we are now going to talk about GitHub as well. So lots of great posts from GitHub actually on the behind the scenes and how they engineer some of these things. And I love these types of posts. So the first one is talking about how they ship code faster and safer with feature flags. So talking about the fact that they're decoupling the deployments from almost the release, I guess, or the delivery. Decoupling those two aspects there. So they talk about how they use feature flags there, the cost of feature flag, and then how they go and manage that there. Another one very similar. This is more about open source, but how they go and use GitHub Actions to manage the GitHub docs as well there. So they give a bit of a screenshot and a snippet of some of the GitHub Actions they have there and how they integrate into the workflow. So again, a nice update there. An update around GitHub Desktop. Now there's a new version 2.8. It goes and supports hiding white space, expanding diffs, and creating repository aliases. So if you're using GitHub Desktop, maybe worth evaluating and looking at upgrading the client you're using there. Super engineering update here. This one does take a bit of time to set aside and really dig into the detail. I think I've read about half of it and I need to go back and revisit the final half around this. But what they talk about is the intricacies of what it takes to go and optimize the maintenance needed for large mono repos. So it probably goes without saying, right? The larger the repository, the higher the cost of maintenance of that repository. And when you think of the internals of the maintenance there, you know, how you can quickly and easily pull those changes down very quickly, and some of the things that need to be done behind the scenes there. Really fascinating. If you've seen some of my content around how Git works behind the scenes, they touch upon some of that, like the objects, the trees, the blobs, all of these kind of things, and how that then relates to things like bitmaps and how they pack that up and use a single pack, multi-pack kind of scenario. Fascinating blog post. So if you're interested in the behind the scenes and really getting to the weeds of how they've optimized this is absolutely a blog post for you. I wouldn't say it's for everyone here, but they have made some phenomenal optimizations here. So again, just really encourage you to look at that if you're interested in the engineering insight behind that. Next up then, they are looking for feedback effectively around their policies around exploits and malware. So there is a pull request open for public comments. So they're inviting security researchers, developers, and the like to collaborate on some clarifications so that they understand what's needed from the entire community. So if you're interested in that, go ahead, take a look. And then finally, Dependabot, I have mentioned that I am such a big fan of the work that GitHub are doing in the DevSecOps space. So if you have been following GitHub and what they're doing there, of course, they acquired Semel back last year. Dependabot was a part of that. Dependabot Preview has been around for quite some time. And of course, before it was acquired by GitHub, you could go and access that from dependabot.com. They have mentioned there that they are going to be closing both of those down on August the 3rd of this year. And if you want to keep getting some of those benefits, you need to upgrade to the native GitHub Dependabot. There are some differences. There are some features where there is not parity. They detail those in terms of what's coming in the roadmap, how you can go and get those, and some of those which won't be coming in the roadmap as well. So again, some great updates there from the GitHub team, so check those out. And finally, in terms of the content this week, so on Monday just gone, I did my first blog post of the week, which was about an introduction to Logic Apps, talking actually not just about Logic Apps as an introduction, but also how I go and use Logic Apps in Cloud with Chris, how I actually go and automate some of the releases of content to sites like Twitter, to Reddit, and the like as well. So I talk through that and showcase one of my example Logic App workflows there. Then on Wednesday, had an introduction to Logic Apps preview blog post as well. So I just walk through some of the theory, what's changed, what's the same, and some of the benefits. And overall, if I boil that down, what it really comes down to is to do with the code development experience, so being able to use local development tools and also being able to host it in numerous places as well. So the Logic Apps runtime, this preview runtime that they're building, is now focused all around building on top of the functions runtime. So really interesting, because now you can do some local development. They've enhanced the local tools which are available in Visual Studio Code as well, so you have the designer locally available, and it's a really great experience. I detailed that in that blog post, and also talk through some of the new concepts like stateful and stateless Logic Apps and some other things in there as well. So if you're interested in the evolution, please go ahead, check out that blog post. I am probably going to do a few more at some point on those, so I just need to go ahead and figure out exactly what I'm going to write on there. There are some interesting things. I was chatting with a few folks on Twitter there about some of the things that you can now do. For example, building your own connectors as well. Very, very interesting. Times ahead, I think, for workflows and logic apps overall. So again, worth, if you're at the beginning of that journey, just taking a look through that blog post and guiding you through that there. And then also on Wednesday, had the Glasgow Azure user group. Really, really great session, full of lightning talks, some brilliant speakers as normal from what I see in the community, and some great topics there as well. So looking at things like API management, for example, all the way through to Terraform and how you can go ahead and inject dates into your Azure resource creation, for example, as well. I gave one of my talks about Hugo, Azure Storage and Azure CDN, and I think the sessions were recorded, so I'll keep an eye and make sure I update that with the link to the video recordings as well. And you will notice there was no Friday session this week. That is deliberate. I was just feeling a little bit low in energy last week, so I figured I'm not going to push myself. I'm just going to take the time I need. I'm going to go ahead and focus on just chilling out. And it's been a long weekend right here in the UK, so we've had the bank holiday, so I did have a nice relaxing spa day on Saturday. Met up with some friends and had some socially distanced lunch yesterday, and just been working on the pet project again, which I'll show you in a bit. But I will catch back up on that governance session at some point this week or in the coming weeks. It is not forgotten about, but it will be coming out. So I apologise that it wasn't out on when it was scheduled, but just as I'm sure you can all appreciate right in these times, just needed to take that bit of time to focus on myself a bit there. So, coming up this week, we have got Weekly Vlog 18, which you are listening to, so thank you for listening. Later today, I will have a blog post coming out about search engine optimization and some tips and tricks that I've been looking into around something called schema.org, which is how you can go and use structured data to influence what the search engines will render and also help with that SEO improvements there as well. Last week, I recorded a session with my good friend Dominic Williamson, so that session will be coming out on Wednesday, which is the 4th of the Cloud Gaming Notes episode, so really looking forward to that one coming out. It's a brilliant session talking all about a game that he's built called Social Sudoku, or Sudoku Social, I should say. It is a social Sudoku application and uses Azure PlayFab in the back end along with Unity and other things as well. So really great episode, really pleased for him on a personal level as a friend. I'm really excited to see that game go out of beta and to be launched on the iOS and Android stores there. And we showed the app, we talked through some of the implementation as well, so go ahead and check that one out. And then also coming up this week then, we have a session on GitHub Actions and Azure and using environments with GitHub Actions. So a little bit of a session, if you like, just really focused on GitHub Actions, Azure and environments and how you can go and use those. So continuation of some of the previous sessions that we were doing around GitHub and GitHub Actions and Azure. So lots going on. There'll be another blog post coming out on Wednesday as well. I did have some ideas about what that would be. I think it might be something to do with the search engine optimization again, but this time talking rather than about what I'm doing with SEO, talking about some of the things I'm doing with the cross-posting that I introduced last week. So medium.com, you can see that I've got a number of articles and episodes up there, so not fully complete because I'm limited to posting 10 posts a day on Medium, so I'm gradually working through the backlog of things I've triaged ready to go there. But on Dev2, I have already gone ahead and ported across all of my content, so we can go and see, for example, that all of my posts are now available up there, or at least the ones that I feel add some value and not so dated that they're not relevant anymore. And you can see in here, for example, it's just like you would read on my site, but really a couple of things for me. Obviously, these platforms have a number of users on them, so discoverability, so potentially being able to get new users reading my blog posts and seeing my episodes is incredibly important because I want to broaden that reach. But also, when you create these posts, you can go ahead and have a canonical URL here, which you can see in the HTML and Markdown there as I just zoom in. So that is really important that you do this right, because if you do it in such a way that you don't point back to the original content, from an SEO perspective, search engines will penalize you for that because it doesn't know which is the canonical original endpoint. So, who is potentially copying, I guess, and, not being true to themselves in terms of the content that they're creating there. So make sure that you point back to that original location with the canonical URL. And that, again, is just so important from an SEO perspective, and is really what I've been focusing on with the Hugo CrossPoster, which has been making some great progress in the evenings this week. So I now have added a bit of rigor into the process there. I've now got some tests, some unit tests, excuse me, focusing mainly on the Markdown converter piece at the minute, and I do need to update the naming convention a bit because this is really Markdown with a YAML front matter, but I want to be able to have things like a TOML front matter and others, so I just need to do a bit of thinking about how I'm architecting this code base. But what you can see here is all of my unit tests around that. If I jump back into my actions, you'll see that I also now have a number of kind of warnings and things because I am now using Sonar Cloud as well. So I've really been focusing on trying to bring down the technical debt, of which there is a minimal amount here now. So things like, for example, being able to go ahead and get rid of the code smells. I've got some to-do comments in there as well. So I'm really trying to operate this as a true engineering project here. So focusing on a few more unit tests, for example, testing that the medium service and the dev2 service are working as expected. So I need to go and mock those HTTP calls. That is something I'm going to be working on. And also some optimizations, like, for example, if an integration token is not correct and you don't authorize to the API, there's no point sending all of the blog posts if you've got a folder of files that you want to try and post up there, because they're all going to fail, right? So there's just things like that which are kind of paper cuts in terms of the functionality that I haven't implemented yet, which I want to go and do. And I've also been working on things like adding Poly, the framework for .NET, for adding resilience, for example, and thinking about things like retries and circuit breakers and whatnot, because something I found when I was posting to Dev2 is that I was quickly hitting the kind of 429, you've sent too many requests, you need to go and retry. I was finding that I was hitting quite a lot of that, so I don't want to overwhelm their service. I don't want to become a problem for them. Not that I would overwhelm, but just doing the right things from an implementation detail and practicing what I preach with some of those cloud design patterns, so bringing that into the software as well. So that is now included, and again, I just need to somehow test that actually works. So those are the things top of mind for me, and that I'll be working on furthering this project. But really looking for people to contribute, and that request that I mentioned last week about having someone to come on and almost kind of peer review on air. We could do something like GitHub Code Spaces and have the remote dev tooling where we can go ahead and kind of screen share, or live share as the term is, and go and look through the code. Would love to have someone do that, because I think it would just be an interesting experience for other folks in the community to learn from as well. So really looking to get someone to go and share their perspective, really. So if that's interesting to you, please go ahead and do that. So with that is really what I wanted to cover in this session today. So we've been running for about 30 minutes, so gonna wrap us up. You know what to do. If you've liked this session, please go ahead, hit that like button, hit the notification bell, and of course subscribe, because I am trying to reach 500 subscribers by the end of the year. I am now sitting at 440, so I only need 60 more. So even if I get one a day for the next 2 months, I'll hit it by the end of the year. But I'd love to get there sooner. Can we get to 1,000 by the end of the year? That's ambitious, I know, but it would be great to really accelerate that, because as you can see, I'm really putting in a lot of time and effort to grow the channel and to make content that is valuable to you. So as always, If there is something you'd love to hear about, let me know on Twitter at RedoBowen. Also, you can go and make a GitHub issue over on my repository, github.com/chrisreddington/cloudwithchris.com. Or, of course, liking the episodes on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube really helps me understand what it is that you like and that you don't like as much, and I can go and prioritize that. And, of course, not just those platforms, because now there is Dev2 and there is Medium.com, and I'm seeing some great traction on Dev2. So all of those signals are coming in and helping me prioritize that content. So with all of that, thank you once again for tuning in. I hope you have a great bank holiday weekend. I will be, of course, working on some new content. I'm recording with some speakers this week for cloud drops and for some other content coming up this week. So it's all happening. So as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you for watching in on this week's episode. We'll be back with another weekly vlog next week and more content coming up later on in the week. So until then, stay safe and bye for now.